So as a orthomolecular psychiatrist since the mid-70s, now about 46 years, I've accumulated a certain amount of work working with both people who are psychotic as well as people who are depressed and so forth and so on. In my book, Depression Free for Life, I talk about a 90% success rate, okay? And feelings are part of it. But what I've also come to realize, even though I'm trained as a psychiatrist, that there is more going on. And I talk about it as the biologically altered brain. So I want to give a little background to that because part of the problem is the brain has been biologically altered. So it's not all psychological. And what do I mean by that? Well, this is unbelievable, but since 1850 till now, we have approximately 100 times more mental disability, meaning people not able to work in relationship to the population. That's very significant. A good part of this has been related to the use of psychotropic drugs. Okay, now I won't go into the whole thing, and there's like hours of discussion about it, but I want to say some very clear things. Research I was involved in since 1972 is that what we know is when people are given psychotropic drugs, as the head of the 1996, Dr. Hyman said, of the NIMH, there is a perturbation in the brain function. Now let's go a little further. This has to do with antipsychotic drugs, it has to do with antidepressant drugs, and it has to do with anti-anxiety drugs. They actually change the structure and function of the brain. And it isn't all that easy to reverse it. But just to give you an example, because there's a mythology out there that it's important to let go of before we can step in to say, well, what can we do? At 90%, we can do a lot better than what they were doing. So the research shows actually people get worse on psychotropic drugs. I was involved in some of the initial research in the 1970s with top people from the National Institute of Mental Health, like Jonathan Coles, who's the head of it. And basically what we found is when people were given antipsychotic drugs, they got worse. What does worse mean? They got better for a few weeks. What does worse mean? It means in the 5-year follow-up, they had a much higher rate of rehospitalization than people have received no medication. Think about that. Because we have a mythology is that people need these things. No, it makes them worse. And it's dose-related, meaning the higher the dose, the more amount of relapse. And that also is true with depression, antidepressant drugs, and also with the anti-anxiety, and also with all the drugs our kids are getting today for, quote, hyperactivity, which translate a little bit further. The antidepressant drugs are associated with a very high rate of moving into manic depressive. Once you're in manic depressive, and we're talking according to the American Psychiatric Association, up to 20% of people who receive antidepressants go into manic depression, and then we're talking about psychosis and more medication. What's the end result? We got 100 times more people on mental disability. So kind of get what we're talking about. Now, that holds too with the anti-anxiety drugs. They look good at 4 weeks. They are better than not. At 8 weeks, it's a break even, and at 23 weeks, all the psychoactive, anti-anxieties like the benzodiazepines and so forth, they actually make you worse. So at 23 weeks, you have more anxiety attacks, more panic attacks. So all the medications people are taking are actually literally and scientifically making people worse. Now, once we kind of get that, even though you may get some relief, as I say, at 4 weeks, the anti-anxieties, that's good. 8 weeks to break even, and then 23 weeks worse, is that we need to let go of the myth that these things make any difference. And the National Institute of Mental Health has made it clear that all the theories of excess dopamine, excess serotonin, none of them have been proven true. We don't actually know what goes on. As literally, as the head of the National Institute of Mental Health said, Stephen Hubman in 1990, we don't really know what the problem is. Okay, once you get that, then suddenly you're treating things holistically makes a lot more sense, which is what you were talking about, which obviously includes the emotional part, but also includes the nutritional part, includes the building up the neurotransmitters. It includes optimal nutrition. It includes a live food diet. My book, where 90% success rate with depression is a whole 100% vegan and at least an 80% live food diet. It includes avoiding things you're allergic to. I remember in the 70s, somebody got an injection of wheat, and they went psychotic in 15 seconds. It was a course I was taking, and it's like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. 15 seconds and you're psychotic? It really woke me up to the fact that allergies, food allergies, can make a huge difference. It's not just something in your mind, so to speak. It's very real physiologically. And it's also inflamed. So that's the background where we start looking at, okay, what kind of nutrients can we do to rebalance it, which is this hardcore thing that Steve's talking about. But please understand, we're all unique individuals. We have 20, 30,000 genes and probably 200,000 gene variations. So there isn't not one pat formula for everyone. But there's some general strokes. So when we're going to talk about brain, which is different than body health somewhat, we're really going to talk about what's going to build the brain, what's going to build the the neurons. So one of the first things is phospholipids. Phosphatidylserine is an example of that. Very important. Next, we're going to look at the omega-3s. People always test for the DHA. EPA is in there too, particularly for manic depression. But I've seen women come to me with 10 years postpartum depression, and in 3 weeks with DHA, go to normal. There's a long explanation, but we're not doing too many explanations. I'm making Stephen happy here, okay? He's very straight-faced, but truly, we want to get that it works. It works a high percentage of the time. So that's pretty simple. But what are we talking about? The neurons, their membranes working right. That's what we're talking about. We need long chain of the omega-3s, the DHA and EPA. That's why it's a little dangerous to go on a really low-fat diet.